Hello and welcome to the Place to Place podcast. I'm Claire Dewhurst, the Director of City Nation Place, which is the forum for place brands and place marketing. The idea behind this podcast series is to create a chain of conversations between place branding leaders to give you the opportunity to listen in to honest conversations about their challenges, the solutions they're finding, and the opportunities they're exploring to ensure that their place brand strategies deliver real economic benefits. We're really thrilled that you've chosen to tune in, and I hope you enjoy the discussions. We're on episode 12, and I'm delighted to welcome back Rose Wangen-Jones, who is the Managing Director across Marketing, Destination and Commercial for London and Partners. And she's asked us to set up a chat with Clarisse Berggårdh, who is the Chief Executive of Helsinki and Partners. And so I'm sure that word partners is going to come into the frame as we talk about being connected organisations and setting up collaborative partnerships. But I'm delighted that Rose is going to lead the conversation and happy to hand over to you. And I'm just going to sit back and listen. Over to you, Rose.
Clarisse, I'm delighted that we're having a chat. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to hear about your new role, about the new organization, Helsinki Partners. And of course, I'm interested in understanding what your plans are. What are you trying to achieve in this role? What are the big plans for Helsinki? And I'm sure that everybody will be interested in that and hearing that as well. So again, like I said, I'm delighted to be here talking to you. Could we start with a bit of sort of background and tell us why the organization, these two organizations, the Business Hub and Marketing, came together as Helsinki Partners?
Well, I actually think that it was our former mayor who had probably seen what happened in London or somewhere else, who felt that there are synergies and there are opportunities by combining these two companies, that it's basically started from his head. And as I've understood, he got support from others, and that's why there was this decision. But this decision has, of course, happened before my time. So I don't know all the facts. This is what I have been told.
This wasn't, I promise, it wasn't a leading question, but good to hear. And again, we have a lot of learning that I'm happy to share. But from your perspective, in terms of you coming new to the role, what were the expectations that this new merged organization would deliver better than the separate organizations couldn't do before?
Well, the way I was briefed when the recruitment process actually started, and what really inspired me, was that everybody was talking about that they want to see a significant leap in what we are doing for Helsinki, because we do feel that the product and the brand are not, there's more to the product than to the brand. So there needs to be a significant leap. We have started later than our countries or neighboring capitals, and there's a lot to do. So I think that that's the most important expectation.
So you talk about a significant leap. How do you see that? How do you expect, what is the positive outcome for the citizens of the city, for the community?
Well, I would say that our challenge can be described in 3 words: awareness, awareness, awareness. Helsinki is not known. People don't know it. Plus that if somebody has been to Helsinki 15 years ago or 10 years ago, the city has changed so much. So our biggest challenge is really, and our biggest task is really, to increase the awareness and, really to show people what Helsinki is.
So interesting. I love the awareness. So on that note, Clarisse, what is Helsinki, for those who do know Helsinki, what is the perception of Helsinki now, and what would you like it to be?
Well, I think that everybody, if somebody knows Helsinki, they know that the city is very well functioning. It is, fairly small. You don't hit traffic. Everything works, Even if there's a snowstorm like there is today, there's not a train that is canceled. There's not a flight that is canceled. Everything works. So this is what people know about Helsinki. But what people know much less about is the restaurant scene, the culture, all the fun things in life. Those are not known because basically so much has developed in the city in the last, let's say, 10 or 15 years or even 5 years. So that is very much what we need to also talk about. And having said that, most people don't even know that Helsinki is a very well-functioning city. Those who have been here know that, but that's not everyone.
So the people that experience the city, that once they're there, they can see it working at its best. But it's so funny that when you get there, the idea that everything works when there's snow. I mean, London, as you know, is perfect in many ways. But I tell you, things do come to a stop when we get some snow. So yes, I could understand that well functioning at times like that feels like a very
and it goes with everything about functioning. In Helsinki, everything functions. So, it's like all of these things that we think are very important. Everybody knows that, but it's the beauty of life that we need to talk more about.
And that's really interesting because here in London, we've just launched the London 2030 tourism vision. And at the heart of it is all about experience. And what's really interesting is that what you're talking about is almost taking the friction of the experience, the transport or the getting from A to B or those kind of daily things that don't make the experience, but can be a detriment to the experience. You take all of that friction away, but focus is very much on the culture bit. So could you talk a little bit about that? What is the positioning that you want to create for Helsinki?
I think one can actually go back 10 years when Helsinki was the design capital of Europe. And we really talked very much about not design in the common sense, more about the kind of service design of a city. How it's designed to really serve, its citizens and its visitors and everything, how things work. And I think that has been pretty much the red thread in our way of talking about the city, how life is designed in a city, how things work. But I think that what we have spoken so little about is still, all these other things. We start from that. And then there are aspects that are kind of also very self-relevant to us, but that are very, very exotic to many people. And that's how in Helsinki, the urban and the rural go together. So you can basically be in the center of the city and still experience nature. So those kind of things are very, very unique to Helsinki.
You kind of go back a little bit when you talk about the design and how things work. It goes back to, again, that sense of well functioning, but it added on top, again, that enhances the experience, but it doesn't make the experience per se. So it's really interesting, particularly now that you come together with visitors, investors, business. It goes back to what attracts people, makes them come again, makes them want to establish themselves. And that's what with London and Partners, again, when we come together and that story becomes attractive, not just for the visitor, but the investors, the talent you're trying to attract, etc. So is that kind of virtuous circle, if you will? Is that what you're trying to create with your work in Helsinki Partners?
Yes. I think you are describing it very well. What the pandemic actually taught us when we looked at the world and how that also changed maybe perceptions and expectations is that helped us also to see, these kind of things that, again, we take as, they are just something that we always live with. But the fact is that safety, for instance, is something that is very, very exotic to many people. And for us, it's self-evident. And the way, we could live quite freely in Helsinki during the pandemic because there is room and there is nature. There's a joke now in Finland that thank goodness the pandemic is over because we were required to have a 2-meter distance and now we can go back to 4. This kind of describes it, that we are talking about the livability of a place now. And I think that the pandemic taught us that those aspects that we haven't really thought about really make our product. The fact that, you have distance, you have nature, you have air, you have, space. You can sit in the underground and you probably have 4 seats to yourself, those kind of things. I think that there are things that will stay with us after the pandemic. Even if we don't continue using masks, we might not like crowds as much as we were able to accept before. So I think that those kind of things are now becoming a part of our brand.
So, Clarisse, I mean, what kind of audiences then are, because you're talking about take it as self-evident. I'm assuming that you mean the locals and then the others that may value that. So what audiences are you focusing on and what kind of propositions? Because I think you're going more values-led propositions. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Our audiences, our target groups are, of course, visitors, congress organizers, but I mean tourists in general. Then, of course, it's investors and it's talent. So, I mean, we are talking to all of these groups of people, but we don't see really there's a clear difference between, what the value proposition is to these people. And of course, Helsinki is probably not for everyone. If you want to go somewhere where there's eternal sunshine and cheap booze, this is not the place. I mean, sunshine you might have really nicely for in the summertime, but alcohol is very expensive in Finland. And the taxes are high. But I think that we are aiming at people. We call them like curious people. Very often people who also value sustainability. They value a very egalitarian society. Those kind of things, of course, have to come up very high on the value scale. But we do also see that there is an increasing amount of people who, for instance, want to travel in a sustainable way. And that is very much in the core of our thinking about, this whole sustainable lifestyle. How can you live a sustainable lifestyle? And so that is very much also, if we think about what our target groups have in common, that's very much something. So very value based, I would say.
That's interesting because that's where we're going as well. As a matter of fact, with our vision, we're more and more focusing on mindsets and less on demographics in terms of who we're trying to attract. To your point, accessibility, sustainability. When you're looking at values based, is what are the values of London as a brand? Therefore, who are the people that we want to attract? It sounds like you are doing something similar.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe that's the theme of today. I mean, everywhere. I think that what I've seen presentations, this is something that I think everybody is thinking about, because that separates people much more maybe than, the old ways of segmenting people that were more based on maybe age or those kind of demographic factors.
Yeah. And does that mean, because one of the challenges that we're having and that we're hoping to solve over the next couple of years is success metrics, because success metrics are very much about volume spend, which are important. But if we're thinking of values-based propositions, if we're thinking of mindset type audiences, then our success metrics need to reflect that as well. Are you thinking about your own success metrics?
Well, of course, we do have the quantitative metrics, because at the end of the day, you are measured by not how attractive you become, but actually how that works for the visitors and everything. But we are also measured on perception. How well are we able to really communicate what we want to communicate about Helsinki? But for Helsinki, it's very much about how do we get people to actually try out the product? Because, since the awareness is on a totally different, I mean, you guys in London, who doesn't know London, spontaneously. So it's a totally different ballgame. But Helsinki, it's still very much the awareness. So I think that for our metrics, that is our first metric.
Yeah, and then it's kind of like where we started. So perception, again, linked to that awareness. I seem to hear that you are thinking about, of course, the hard metrics, if you will, but there has to be some soft metrics as well, especially when we're thinking about mindsets like sustainability, et cetera, carbon efficiency, all of those things, whilst they are in the city. So with that in mind, how long have you been at Helsinki Partners?
I started in the 10th of January, so less than a year. And of course, when you are putting together, merging two different companies, it's very much about leading people in first and foremost, because there were two different companies and people, there are different cultures as well. So I would say that much of my first year has been about really finding our common targets and common values and common culture and really leading the people in this merger. And of course, we have to remember that for the first months when I was starting, it was still, pandemic, and we were still working at distance. And I can tell you that you do not merge companies in teams. It's as you can do many things in teams, but you cannot, merge cultures at distance. That is impossible. So I would actually say that I feel that the work started in about March, April, when we were starting to come back to the office.
So in terms of, so you're talking about, obviously it's all part of a journey, and it does take a while to bring these cultures together. But that leads me to think and ask you, what do you think is your biggest challenge to achieve this awareness, this change of perception for Helsinki? What do you think will be your biggest barrier and challenge to move that forward, to create that success?
I think the expectation to my answer would probably be, this world situation, the fact that not only that there has been a pandemic and then this horrible war in Ukraine and all of that, but I would say that it's none of that actually. It's very much, it's people. It's getting people to really want to work together and create partnerships and really be true to the fact that we are Helsinki Partners. We will not do anything alone. We need to find partners within, our own ecosystem and outside. It's always about leading people and leading culture. And if we fail, it's because we have failed in leading people. That's my answer. So I think that, all kinds of world situations, they come and they go, and we need to adapt to them. But it's this mindset and it's culture and it's the will to succeed, which is absolutely the most important thing.
Clarisse, that's really, really interesting, because one of the things I would say that if there's such a thing as positive coming out of COVID is the intensity of the collaboration that we were able to achieve in London. And I find it quite interesting calling that out as almost your secret for success. And I could not agree with you more, because bringing your people, your team together, and for you, that is quite a challenge, because you're merging these companies at this point. You're quite early as an organization, quite young as an organization, but then bringing the industry along with you, because, it is a fragmented industry. Yours may be, a smaller city than London, but the nature of the industry is very fragmented. That's true everywhere. And bring them along is difficult. Creating that commonality of objective is difficult. So I like you share that challenge. But I tell you, when it works, I think you're absolutely right. It is the recipe for success.
And I also think that what has really, I don't know if I can say surprised me, but impressed me, is that people are so purpose driven. And not only my own team, this company or these two old companies, but also when we reach out to Finnish businesses and entrepreneurs and all kinds of people, there is such a strong sense of purpose. And so many people want to help out. So I think that that's also the beauty of it, to just see that, that inspires me a lot.
But I think you need to take, you and the organization need to take some credit, that sense of purpose, but it's providing that clarity that brings people together, I think is really important. That's why for us, having that vision was so important coming out of COVID to say, okay, what are we doing? We're still in recovery, but we have to start looking at the future and bringing everybody together in terms of what is it that we're tackling next? What are our challenges? What are our gaps? And that for us has been important.
But I think COVID has been such an interesting human experiment, because it really has shown us the value and how important it is for people to actually be together physically. I think that if it had gone on for like 4 or 5 months, we would all still say, oh, well, we can do everything at distance and everything. But it went on for such a long time that we really got to see both the good and the bad in being isolated. And that really showed us that, at least for me, that was a great learning about, human nature and humanity and what's important. And I think that it will take many years that I so enjoy being, in large gatherings with people.
I think that's very fair. And I think that's really interesting, Clarisse. So this whole thing about, had it been 5 months or whatever, a short period versus a long period, I think you're absolutely right that it does make a difference, because we did see both sides of it. And at the end, definitely there's something to be learned and hopefully action, and certainly as destinations,
And it did
sites.
not kill our urge to travel. We can see that.
Well, thank you so much. This has been really, really interesting. I know that everybody listening to this also found it really, really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We could have gone on for much longer.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rose. Thank you so much, Clarisse. I think you're right. I think there's so much to talk about. That conversation could have gone on and on. We'll have to find other opportunities to get you chatting. But for now, thank you so much. And I'm sure that everybody listening has taken away a lot of ideas and thoughts from your conversation. And I look forward, Clarisse, to welcoming you back for episode 13. We look forward to setting that up and look forward to welcoming you back as well, our listeners, for that next episode in the Place to Place podcast.